eventually you'll get the hang of things. Listen, I've got like 300 episodes of the Powerpuff Girls on tape and tons of other stuff to do, and get 'em, Bubbles! I'll call you later, okay? Bye!
Before this video starts, I'd like to announce that this channel finally has a Discord. The link is in the bio. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Mia Buena Costa 5143 and Mario Dude 20, who recommended this topic in the comments. Enjoy. Life guarantees so many things. The sun will rise every morning. It will set every night. Our trees supply oxygen, and we need water to survive. All of those things are guarantees in life, and will be with us while we're on this earth and long after we leave it. Yet the more I live, the more I believe that to be true about the Powerpuff Girls. For as long as I've lived, there's been another different variation of the Powerpuff Girls. The late 90s was Powerpuff Girls mania. Everywhere you went, you saw Powerpuff Girls. There was no form of media that they had not touched yet. Of course, starting with the cartoon itself, which led to them making clothing and shirts, then toys, then video games, then fast food tie-ins, albums, a theatrical movie, and even branding on the side of actual airplanes. And the heat never left. Just when people would start to think that the popularity of the Powerpuff Girls was fading out, the Powerpuff Girls would somehow find a way back into the conversation. Even after the 2016 reboot that could have completely destroyed the franchise, it actually accidentally brought it back to life. It just ended up leaving fans wanting the real Powerpuff Girls, and now the hype for the Powerpuff Girls is the same as it was in the 90s. They are back, and I mean back. They're in full force right now. Merch is literally everywhere. They even had a crossover with Nike, and they created a pair of shoes for each one of the Powerpuff Girls. That's almost unheard of. Whenever Nike does crossovers, they never make a shoe for each and every individual. They usually just make one shoe and slap a label on it. That's how much the Powerpuff Girls are loved right now. And speaking of which, I own the Bubbles pair. But anyways, out of all of the media I've listed and all of the different types of ways the Powerpuff Girls have entered our life, there's one thing that they've tried and have never had great success in. And that's comics. Cartoon Network has apparently been publishing Powerpuff Girls comics since the early 2000s till this day. And you would think that would be the perfect medium for the girls, but despite 20-something years of Cartoon Network's attempts, they've never really broken into mainstream success. And even worse, they've been in the shadow of a now controversial fan manga that has been running for just as long. So, now that the intro is out of the way, let's learn more about the very controversial history of the Powerpuff Girls in comic books and manga.
Trick or treat!
Hey, my first customer. What are you supposed to be there, Curb?
A Powerpuff Girl.
We fought about this for 7 straight hours.
The very first Powerpuff Girls comic was created in 1999, just a year after the series was started. Published by DC Comics, the series ended up running for 6 years and managed to span over 70 issues. Not only did I grow up reading comic books, but I still read comic books till this day. I own so many of them, yet I've never seen a Powerpuff Girls comic book in person. But as weird as that may be, each comic seems to have a unique story in the Powerpuff Girls lore. But I'm not really sure if the comics are canon to the series or not. For instance, the comics mostly tell stories of the Powerpuff Girls that we hadn't yet seen on screen, but in some instances, they've retold events from the series. But weirdly enough, the stories from the comics that they have quote-unquote retold have inconsistencies from when they were seen in the series. For example, a Redditor by the name of Amethyst 2000 Heart had posted a thread of information and inconsistencies that the comics had from the series 4 months ago. And apparently the Powerpuff Girls episode Stray Bullet was adapted as a comic first, titled Go Squirrel Go a few years ago before the episode was even made. In the episode, the squirrel gets its name from the girls, who were adamant on her having a name that starts with the letter B because they wanted her to be an honorary Powerpuff Girl. But in the comic, the character goes by the name Twitchy instead of Bullet, and she wears a cape. Bullet ended up returning only once in the Powerpuff Girls series, in the episode The City of Nutsville, while in the comic, Twitchy returns in the issue Anything Boys Can Do, Squirrels Can Do Better. Another example being the episode Moral Decay, which was also created as a comic first called Holy Molar. Same with the episode Powerpuff that also had a comic by the same name, and the plots were completely identical. And finally, the episode in comic book titled Chalked Up, which Amethyst 2000 Heart says are nearly identical, with the only minor difference being that in the comic book, the villain Helm posed as an elderly man to trick Bubbles, but in the cartoon, Helm posed as a magical butterfly to trick her. Personally, my beliefs, I believe that they're in completely different universes. Just like how the games have differences in how the story is told when comparing it to the original series. But that type of confusion probably didn't help the comic series in the long run, because while everyone may have their opinions on whether it's canon or not, none of the people I've asked can really tell me what the definitive answer of that question is. But anyways, the comics actually surprisingly lasted longer than the series, releasing issues even after Craig McCracken decided to end the show. The comics even managed to introduce new characters to the Powerpuff Girls canon that we haven't seen adapted outside of the comics, at least to my knowledge. While Cartoon Network and DC Comics were building a comic continuity of their own, there will be a growing fan manga rapidly rising in popularity. In January of 2004, cartoon fans and artists named B.R. Siriyuga and Vincent Nago, also known as Bleed Man, whose controversy we will talk about later in this video, created a webcomic, or some would call a web manga, for the Powerpuff Girls. The manga series would feature the Powerpuff Girls moving away from Townsville and having to start anew in a different town. In Chapter 1, they get enrolled into a new school and try to live normal lives, but their reputation as heroes does not follow them. They were laughed at by the classroom, who had no clue who they were. But it's here where we see that Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory is also in their class and is taking notes on what the girls claim. This will lead to him running tests on the girls and challenging them to a fight so he can test their abilities, because in this universe, he is a superhero as well. So after beating up Buttercup, then getting jumped by the rest of the girls who straight up attempted to kill the kid, the fight ultimately gets broken up by none other than Samurai Jack, who is now the school's physical education teacher. Are you noticing a pattern here? This is no regular comic. This is one huge crossover comic with all of the characters fans know and loved interacting with each other. Something that the official Cartoon Network comics weren't offering, at least at the time. And there were even some characters added to the manga that Cartoon Network would never be able to offer, like some of Nickelodeon's characters. And while this is something that we see very often nowadays, everyone sees fan art and crossover stories of characters who most likely legally will never be able to cross paths officially, but fans like to make their own stories. This was different, because this was a very, very, very early webcomic on the internet. YouTube hadn't even been created yet. And yeah, fan art had been created already, it existed before, but there had never been fan art, at least at that time, with the quality as good as it is here. So that, and the lack of proper marketing from Cartoon Network's official Powerpuff Girls comics, is what led to fans of the manga slowly starting to overshadow the official comics itself. I'm not going to recap the whole manga here, but I'll save that for its own dedicated story video. But during the manga's run, one of the creators that we're going to call Bleedman ran into a bit of controversy. Make that multiple controversies. Bleedman was also working on a Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy webcomic. It was just as popular, if not even more popular, than the Powerpuff Girls manga. It even got recognition from the Billy and Mandy creator Maxwell Adams himself when being asked about it by the YouTuber Rebel Taxi.
Chick asks if you ever read Grim Tales, a fan webcomic featuring your characters.
Yes, I did see some of that. That guy can draw like crazy. I only wish I could draw like that. Some beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Until the creators posted what fans would consider an extremely controversial and offensive issue. The manga issues depicted the character of Mandy's plans being discovered and the readers learning that she was behind the 9/11 attacks. She had the blueprints for how the plane was going to hit the towers, she planned the hit on the Pentagon, and she even put a hit on the White House. And I'm not sure what he expected, but this sparked outrage by readers who were caught completely off guard by it. And when fans tried to confront him about mocking a real-life tragedy, Bleedman showed little to no remorse in his now deleted tweets where he justifies his own actions. And this opened up the floodgates for criticism on what was once a respectable artist and now what people saw as a freak in more ways than one. Trigger warning. For anyone who isn't comfortable with the discussion of sexualizing children, please skip to the time frame that I put on the screen now. While it was obvious to some, fans would discover that Bleedman is a fan of what is called lowly art, which is when you draw a character who you are sexually interested in with childlike features. Bleepman has not only drawn, but has publicly posted drawings of himself lusting over characters who are well underage. And while all of that may have been a huge hit to Bleepman's career and the popularity of the Powerpuff Girls web manga, fans of the manga have also noted that even without Bleepman's controversy, the quality of the chapters have fallen off after chapter 6, which led to a rapid decline in support for the webcomic. Both of those controversies piled on top of each other stunned the growth of the webcomic, despite the efforts of the other writers who shouldn't be blamed for Bleepman's controversy. But in the midst of the webcomic's downfall, Cartoon Network thought this would be the perfect opportunity for them to make a return. So Cartoon Network will order 10 Powerpuff Girls issues to be released, and they released a pretty decent success. And now that they were the only players in the game, they decided to take what the web manga did and make it their own official version in 2015 with the Powerpuff Girls Super Smash Up crossover series, which saw the Powerpuff Girls teaming up with literally everybody. They couldn't use Nickelodeon characters, but they had a lot of characters to pick from. Dexter's Laboratory, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Samurai Jack, Johnny Bravo, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Cow and Chicken, Camp Lazlo, and even I Am Weasel. And that's just the characters on the cover. The list probably is a lot longer, but Cartoon Network did not hesitate to take advantage of the situation. But unlike the last time they published comics through DC, this time they had partnered up with IDW, who makes the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. The IDW Powerpuff Girls crossover comics brought all these characters back and officially managed to give us what many would consider to be a pretty fun crossover. But again, that brings up the question, what is the continuity? Are they canon to the comic books that came out from DC, or are the IDW ones on their own canon? The continuity is kind of a mess, but people have fun with these comics either way, so it doesn't really matter. Because after the 10-issue crossover event, the Powerpuff Girls will get another comic series. This one I'm sure isn't canon to any of the other series, because this one will be about the 2016 reboot series. But that's a comic tale for another day. So with that being said, there is almost no form of media that the Powerpuff Girls have not touched, and I will make it my mission to talk about each and every one of them. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and feel free to comment any recommendations for new videos. I consider every single comment that I get, and it means a lot when anybody comments literally anything, so please be sure to support if that's something you feel comfortable doing. And thank you so much for watching.